Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning Instagram fam, friends and followers of As-Safi, and welcome to you I'm welcoming you to the final installment of this week's series under the theme, What Sets Islam Apart from Other Faiths? And the last few days we've been talking about the primary distinguishing feature of the Islamic faith, and that is its strict commitment to upholding the strictest form of Islamic monotheism, or the strictest form of monotheism, Islamic monotheism. What I wanted to do today was give a brief recap on what we covered and hit on a few points. And the last few sessions were kind of longer than I intended these segments to be. But because of the importance of the topic, we were kind of compelled to speak at some length about these issues, especially because, as we mentioned in one of the segments, Islamic monotheism is currently under siege. And it's under siege not by the non-Muslims, this is to be expected, but it's actually under siege by some Muslims, some Muslim activists, and some Muslims with a great deal of celebrity and a large following. That said, let's get right to the recap and try to get you out here, get you in and out a little bit earlier than we have the past few days. So basically, as I said, we've been talking about what sets Islam apart from other faiths. And this topic, which we're going to spend some time on over the next few days, is important because, as we kind of alluded to, it's important because mixing between other faiths, one, is un-Islamic. It's not permissible for us as Muslims to take our faith and kind of borrow things from other faiths and other philosophies and kind of like mix that together and create a personalized faith which has some Islamic elements and elements of other faiths, and that's impermissible. And we actually opened this series of segments this week with the with the chapter from the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet to say, La a'budu ma ta'budun. He told him to say to the disbelievers, I do not worship what you worship, wala antum a'biduna ma a'bud. And you do not worship what I worship. You don't worship the way I worship, nor do I worship the way you worship. And then he told him to conclude that whole presentation by saying, Lakum dinukum waliya din, you have your religion and I have mine, and they are completely separate and distinct from one another. They cannot be mixed together. Another reason why this mixing between faiths is an important topic, and it's important to avoid, is because it adversely affects, when we start mixing our faith with other faiths, or elements of our faith with elements of other faiths, it adversely affects our commitment to Islam. If we have one foot in one faith and one foot in our faith, then we're not completely committed to our own faith. And Allah wants us to be completely committed to Islam. He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kafa. O you who believe, enter into Islam completely. O you who believe, enter into Islam completely. And one last reason that makes this topic that we're discussing and will continue to discuss very important is because mixing between other faiths adversely affects the quality of our Islam. Brothers and sisters, as we have these discussions, what's one of the underlying motivations for these discussions is because some of us in the convert community, many of us in fact, and beyond the convert community, Muslims in general, are struggling. They feel when they actually do a check of themselves, an examination of themselves spiritually, and they're honest with themselves about the results of that examination, many of them find that they are regressing, or at the very least they are stagnating. They're not moving forward. Why aren't we moving forward? Part of the reason is because we're anchored to another faith, because our allegiance to another belief system or ritual system is holding us back. We have to understand that. And once we recognize that, that's the first step towards what? Towards freeing ourselves of that anchor, disconnecting ourselves, cutting the string that ties us to that anchor, and moving forward. And so this is another reason that makes this topic that we're discussing very important. So as we said, the primary distinguishing feature of Islam is the commitment to upholding the strictest form of monotheism. That's what we've been talking about these last few days. And this should matter to us, brothers and sisters, as we recap what we discussed over the week. This being the primary thing that sets our religion apart, it should matter to us. And this mattering should be reflected in our attentiveness to Islamic monotheism. It should, and how does that what does that attentiveness look like? One, we should actively strive to learn what constitutes Islamic monotheism, and also what are the violations, what are the things that constitute a violation of the strict form or the strict form of Islamic monotheism. That's what attentiveness looks like. People will say, I'm attentive to a Tawheed. I'm attentive to monotheism, but then they don't actively learn what monotheism is and what it isn't, so they can do what it is and avoid what it isn't. So then that's not real attentiveness. That's a attentiveness with the mouth, but not an attentiveness with what? With our actions. Also, this attentiveness should demonstrate itself by our commitment in terms of what? Our attitude, our beliefs, and our behavior. All of them should be idolatry free. And they should be free of not just idolatry, but free of pro-idolatry sentiment. And so we can't, brothers and sisters, if we say that we're the people who are attentive to monotheism, we can be the people who have an attitude of hostility or indifference towards monotheism. If we hear the word Tawheed, for example, we hear the word phrase Islamic monotheism, we become upset, we become hostile, we become aggressive towards the one who mentioned it, or toward the people who are commonly known for espousing it. That's not an indication that we are attentive to a Tawheed, to a monotheism, and it's something important to us, something that we value, something we deem precious and important in our religion, in our faith. Or if we're indifferent, yeah, whatever, man. I don't need to hear about that. Whatever, man. That attitude is indicative of a lack of attentiveness. So again, we have to be attentive, and our attentiveness should be reflected in our attitude. Also should be reflected in our behavior, in our beliefs. We can't have beliefs and behavior that are tainted by polytheistic beliefs and practices. So again, brothers and sisters, we can't say we're attentive. We have to demonstrate our attentiveness through what? Through our attitude and through our actual beliefs and practices. And so this is what I wanted to say in a recap of what we spoke about over this past week, just stressing and emphasizing the importance of, one, we as believers in general need to be attentive to those matters that we are observing, those beliefs that we're holding, which are foreign to Islam. And we need to understand that those things are some of the things that are holding us back. So we have to be able to look at our faith and identify what sets our religion apart from other religions. And if we have some of those elements of other faiths in our belief system, in our practices, we need to remove those. We need to realize that Allah wants us to enter into Islam completely. And that part of that, the meaning of that, is removing the influences from other faiths and the elements of other faiths from our beliefs and from our practices. And more importantly, we spoke specifically this week about the primary distinguishing feature of Islam being this strict commitment to upholding the strictest form of monotheism, and how if we are committed, truly committed to Islam, truly committed to being Muslims in the complete sense of the word, and truly committed to improving the quality of our faith and practice, then we're going to have to be committed to this greatest fundamental. We're going to have to be committed to that and make sure we're removing whatever is contradictory to that from our faith, from our belief system, from our practice. And with that, brothers and sisters, we'll bring today's session to a close. But I want to remind, as we often do on Fridays, that if you are listening to the content, if you're following the content, if you're catching up with us later on in the day or later on in the week and reviewing the content and find the content beneficial, find the content that it is either reminding you of something you knew but kind of forgot or became negligent regarding, or it is actually teaching you things that you weren't aware of or that you had not really paid attention to. If you're finding the content beneficial, there are probably lots of people out there who will equally find the content beneficial, but it's not reaching them. And you can help us in that regard by sharing the information. Share the information with your contacts, with your colleagues. Share it with a Revert, that you know, or share it with someone who may know a revert in another city, another town, another state, etc. I also want to remind everyone that inshallah ta'ala, we've been talking in the past about establishing almost a virtual community for reverts online, and establishing it through the humble beginnings of what we call the Reverts Roundtable. An opportunity for us to kind of get together and sit, have a topic that we're going to address together, and kind of just have open discussions and almost like therapy sessions. To be honest with you, in many cases, we as reverts, we need therapy. We have been exposed to trauma in the Muslim community, and we want to hold on to our faith, but holding on to faith for some of us has been a struggle. And this peer-to-peer therapy is something that can be really beneficial for us all. So we want to start that. We want to kick that off, inshallah ta'ala. This Tuesday, November 2nd, will be our first Reverts Roundtable. We'll be using the Clubhouse platform, and we'll be using, and our first meeting will be sponsored by Muslimatic University. They have their own club, and they're going to open a room for us and provide us space and opportunity to have these discussions at 8:30 p.m. this Tuesday, November 2nd. Please tune in, join us, be with us for this Reverts Roundtable, and let other people know. Spread the word. We're going to be there. We're going to have like a brief presentation or discussion just to basically introduce the topic, maybe make a few points, and then open the floor for us to have, really beneficial dialogue and do this peer-to-peer therapy for each other, inshallah ta'ala. So please join us and spread the word. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.